welcome to the Fit Marriage Show, the #1 fitness show for busy folks. I'm Tony DeLorenzo, and today I'm excited to bring you Leslie Kaminoff. Leslie has 30 plus years of experience in the field of yoga and breath anatomy. He is a wealth of information, and you're going to get a lot out of this interview with Leslie. And to you, busy folks, married, who want to start using yoga in your life to enhance your marriage and your life. Let me tell you a little bit more about Leslie. He is the author of Yoga Anatomy, the #1 yoga book on Amazon. He has the Breathing Project. You can get that at www.breathingproject.org. He has the Breath Centered DVD. That's Breath Centered Yoga DVD. He's a founder of the highly respected international yoga list eSutra, featured yoga expert in Yoga Journal, the New York Times, WebMD, Fox News Online, and Health.com. He is married to his wife, Yuma, and they have 3 sons, 11, 16, and 21. And he makes yoga a part of his life. And it's going to be interesting right from the get-go. You're going to learn a lot about Leslie and how he got into yoga. So let's join Leslie for this interview. I hope you enjoy it. Leslie, welcome to the Fit Marriage Show. Glad to have you here today.
Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. So we've had a number of folks come on talking about Qigong, Pilates, and obviously in that progression of genre of exercise and fitness, I felt the need to bring you on, an expert 30 plus years in the yoga industry, to sort of round this out.
30 years ago, it was not an industry, I can assure you.
Yeah, what was it like 30 years ago?
It was a hobby.
Really?
Something we did because we loved doing it. We weren't really making money. You know, I was doing things like teaching classes at health clubs for $4 a pop just so I could use the hot tub, you know, stuff like that.
Nice. How did you get...
Or it was an ashram-based thing, you know, it was part of your spiritual life that you would go and teach at some ashram-based program or center, and there was never any pay involved in that either. So it was always done because we loved doing it, and not because it was a profession of any kind.
So how did you even hear about it 30 years ago?
Actually, my father was taking class here in New York City, just a couple of blocks from where I'm sitting right now at the Shivananda Center, which is on 24th between 7th and 8th. For those of you familiar with Manhattan, right now I'm sitting on 26th Street between Broadway and 6th at my studio, the Breathing Project. And he was taking classes there and was really enjoying it. And I was living on my own in New York City. It was 78, so I was 20 years old. And I took a class, and the experience I had that really resonated with me was the final relaxation, where it was the first time I actually intentionally, fully, consciously relaxed my body. So that was transformational. Signed up for a beginner's course, and by the summer of '79, I was up in Canada at the headquarters of this organization, the Shivananda organization, doing a yoga teacher's training course. So when I say I've been teaching for 30 plus years, I started counting in 1979 when I took that course.
Wow.
I became a yoga teacher. Yeah.
And so in the early years, like you're saying, you were just doing it. It was more hobby.
The only job.
What's that?
Yeah. It was something that you loved to do. There was really no substantial pay involved.
Okay.
Later on, I got more training in anatomy and hands-on work and all the different things I had eventually become exposed to, like sports medicine, dance medicine, things like that. And so, really in private practice, working individually with people, which I still do. And that was really how I earned my living for many, many years. The actual teaching part of it didn't become a decent paying job until I'd say the mid-90s, at least for me.
Wow, yeah. That's really cool. All right, well, let's dig into yoga. And I was on your site checking out. This is the breathingproject.org, right? where
Yes.
people can
That's one of
find
them.
more information about you. And one of the things that grabbed my attention was this rational yoga, because I'd never heard of that before. And
Yeah, you would have found that on yogaanatomy.org, not
okay, that was
breathingproject.org.
on yoga.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Rational yoga for me is about grounding the fundamental principles of yoga in the reality of our bodies on this planet now, not in the past in scriptures or any of the sacred texts that are being referred to. When people talk about authentic yoga, many times they mean that it's somehow related to the Vedic teachings that come to us from ancient India, and that's certainly one perspective on it. My point is that we can get an authenticity in our yoga practice simply by going deeply into our present physical anatomical reality and exploring the body and the breath, and the principles that emerge from that exploration, not surprisingly, coincide very nicely with the ancient teachings. It's just a question of where you go to find them. When you take more of a rational approach, not a mystical approach. See, when I say rational, I mean it in contrast to, say, a mystical approach, which relates ultimate truth to somewhere other than here.
okay.
Which
would
that's
be more
really,
of a spiritual.
well, you see, spiritual is not the same as mystical,
Okay.
and I think that's where some confusion arises. The word spirit really comes from the Latin root for breath. It's the same root that the word respiration has. It means breath, and so spiritual for me is really about connecting with the life force that animates your body, and that's the breath. And so you can be spiritual without being mystical. When I use the word rational, it's to really point people in the direction of their bodies, this reality, and how to make their practice and their understanding of their practice authentic based on what's here and now, not something that happened thousands of years ago that's being interpreted through a lineage of teachings. Which is not to say that I don't respect that enormously. Obviously, I was trained in that. But ultimately, we have to judge the truth of those teachings based on our own experience. And our own experience is something that happens here.
Right. Yeah, it's bringing people into the present and realizing what's happening now. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's what yoga is all about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And talk to me about the breathe-centered yoga and how's that performed and how's that different?
Well, in a way, breath-centered yoga is a somewhat redundant term. A good question to ask would be, what distinguishes yoga practice from other things people do that bear some resemblance to it, like stretching, calisthenics, dance, Pilates, all of these things. There's only so many shapes you can put a human body in, and there's only so many movements that a body in a kind of a structured practice is capable of doing. And there's a lot of benefit that a lot of people get from all the other things that they could do, like, stretching or calisthenics or isometric exercises or whatever. So the real question is, what distinguishes yoga from any of that? And that would have to be breathing. It would have to be the fact that in yoga practice, you're bringing the mind and the body and the breath into a kind of an organized, integrated way of functioning with each other. And so the breath is seen as the connecting principle between the mind and the body. So without a focus on breath, even though someone may be doing something that looks like a yoga practice or a yoga posture, from our definition, they're not actually doing yoga. They may be doing something that's very beneficial, but what makes it yoga is that element of the breath, using that to connect all the different aspects of our system to each other.
So it's bringing together the breath, the posture, the movement. That's what makes it yoga.
And the mind. And the mind. It takes an enormous amount of concentration to bring all of those elements together into a singular activity. So when you look at the traditional teachings about yoga, it really is all about the mind. There's very little information in the Yoga Sutras, for example, which is the class, about what to do with the body. There's a few suggestions There's a few suggestions about the breath, but the vast majority of the text is talking about the mind, and that's what makes it yoga.
Gotcha. So, can somebody do a yoga practice at home?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You can do a yoga practice anywhere. In fact, you know, by a certain definition, what you're doing in a group class with a teacher is that you're just practicing to practice.
Okay.
Meaning that you're learning the principles in the class that you're going to then take out into the rest of your life and apply in whatever situation you find yourself in, whether it's interpersonal, or just your body moving through space, or your relationship with the universe at large. I mean, that's something that happens every moment you're awake. In fact, there are some aspects of yoga practice that have a lot to say with what's happening while you're asleep as well. So,
Okay.
it's sort of an all-encompassing perspective. And what you do in a class that's led by an instructor is that you're learning certain principles in a structured environment so that you can take them out and live them in your life. So a home practice or a self-practice is something that a lot of people like to do, whether it's just reproducing what they learned in a group situation with a teacher, or following a video, or an audio product or a book. I've met a lot of people who just took a book that outlined a yoga practice and worked with it on their own and became extraordinary practitioners.
Okay.
That's definitely possible.
And I'm going to give a plug to you because I got this from your post. Breath-centered yoga.
Yeah, that's me with the beard.
Yeah, and this is great, you guys. I had the opportunity to check some of this out before I interviewed Leslie here, and I dig it. I was really intrigued, and one of the things that I found very interesting about it, and I'd like for you to go into this more, is how you don't go into any of these, I guess you call them almost floor movements, where you're putting a lot of weight on your arms or your wrists.
There's no weight on the arms or wrists
in
that entire DVD. That's the whole point of that sequence that I designed, because there's certainly enough out there with the traditional, weight bearing on the arms kind of salutations and down dog, up dog, stick pose, all of those things. But to do a strong flowing practice that works the body and works the breath and works the spine without any weight on your arms, a lot of teachers don't know how to sequence that. And I put this out there as an alternative, particularly because people spend so much time with, these things, keyboards.
Yeah.
And so they're stressed out. They're stressed out at work. They're, on a keyboard or a mouse or whatever it is all day long, and they want to de-stress, and they go to a yoga class, and a lot of times the very first thing they're asked to do in the very first class is to hold up their body weight on their arms and wrists, in something like a sun salutation. And I consider that to be an intermediate level skill, not a beginning skill. So the DVD you held up, it has movements that emphasize the arms moving through space and connecting all of those movements with the breath, which is the fundamental skill that we like to give people before we even ask them to put any body weight on their hands.
Yeah, and I liked it. I mean, I went through, I think, the strength one once or twice, and I'm an endurance cyclist, and I felt it. I was going, wow, this is good stuff.
Yeah, even for an endurance cyclist, you see, the thing that, well, as an athlete, you would know this, that physical training is very specific. You get good at endurance cycling by doing endurance cycling. You don't necessarily get good at holding your legs statically in one position and supporting your pelvis and spine moving over that base of support. You need a different kind of strength for that. So it's very specific to the sort of postural strength that we need in our feet and our legs to hold ourselves up posturally.
Yeah.
And that's more of what yoga develops, and why it's actually very good sort of cross training for an athlete.
And what I like, though, too, with this for myself is, yes, sometimes I'm sitting down in front of the computer for long amounts of time, or on my bike, I'm just sitting in this one position. What this was allowing me to do was really extend my range of motion out beyond what in this little square box that I'm usually in. And I was really digging that. So let's go to these busy couples, because that's what Fit Marriage is about. Couples, probably just like yourself, you're married. You have 3 sons. I'm assuming they're older now.
21, 16, and 11.
Oh, so they're not that much older. You still got an 11-year-old at home and a 16 at home. So how can busy couples bring a practice, a yoga practice together where they could do it together at home in their lives?
Okay, well, there's a couple of ways to look at that. Of course, you would picture maybe a husband and a wife in a room doing yoga together in the same space, perhaps. And that's one way. There are also ways of practicing where you're actually working with each other. Partner yoga, couple yoga is called. There's something very popular now called acro yoga, where like the man would be on his back with his legs up, and the woman is sort of supported there on her pelvis in different positions and stretching and bending, and and depending on the relative size and proportions of the couples, that can even reverse. There's a lot of sort of leg strength that's involved in that, as well as flexibility and balance. So there's ways that people can practice where they're interacting with each other, or just be practicing, separately in the same space. And I'd say that for most people, the ability to do that is usually dependent on them having studied in a group class with a teacher. I mean, let's face it, that's how 99% of the people who study yoga either got started or continue with their studies. But there are some DVDs that are out there that are very good, that even emphasize this, the couples yoga. And then there's other aspects of the yoga practice that have more to do with using yoga as a way of relating couples to each other. This is where you get into more of the sort of tantric-based practices, where there's things like mutual gazing and mutual breathing exercises, and it gets even into the more sensual, sexual realms and all of that. But yoga has a lot to say about a lot of things, and there's certainly a lot of people out there who are producing educational products that cover this entire spectrum.
Okay.
One of the more fun things to do, I think, if people want to practice together on their own, is to go together to a group class where there's an instructor and there's some guidance. I mean, I'm assuming that these are people just getting started, not people that have some prior experience.
Or they may even just have done a little bit on their own, but now they're looking at, hey, how do I incorporate this within my marriage? And I think you're going on the right direction there, getting to a class.
Well, sure. Yeah, I think the idea of, well, first of all, the bigger question is, how do busy couples find a time slot where they're both available with no distractions to be doing the same thing at the same time, whether it's yoga or cooking or talking or anything.
Yeah, especially it with little ones running around, teenagers like yourself, man. They interrupt a lot.
Exactly. Which is why doing it in the home is maybe not the easiest thing, at least to start with. Mm-hmm. It's easier maybe to have an appointment where you go and you meet your partner at a class or a studio.
Yeah. Because
you're more likely to keep that appointment. And then you go and you do that, and then, you kind of take that energy and go, oh, this is really cool. How to take some of what we learned into the home. But it's just the sort of thing that happens in relationships and busy marriages in general, mm-hmm. is how do you carve out not only the space, but the time, and the space in the home is often like, where are you going to do it in the home? Is it in your living room? Is it in your bedroom? Is there a den? Do you have an exercise room? Because two people doing a full-on yoga practice requires a certain amount of square footage. So there are practical concerns.
Okay.
The ceiling has, some people, I'm a tall guy. Some of the ceilings in my house, I bring my arms up and my fingertips are scraping the ceiling.
Yeah. Good point.
So there's a lot of practical little details, which is why I think, at least to get started, making a yoga date to go and take a class somewhere, not only makes it more likely that it's going to happen, but also you have the input from an instructor who has experience, mm-hmm. And you can then that and work with it if you want to bring it back into the home. In fact, getting connected with a local yoga studio is a great idea, because you'll find that there are people there that actually can go and do out calls where they'll come and work with you as a couple. which is another great way to go. And that's a way a lot of yoga teachers sort of supplement their incomes by doing private sessions. And you can often get them to come in, and it's quite reasonable. It's not any more than a trainer or anyone else who would be coming in to help you with whatever you're doing. And again, that's more of an appointment you have to keep.
Yeah.
Because if someone else is coming in and you're paying them, and the cell phone's going to get turned off, the kids are going to be taken care of, the dogs are going to be in the wherever, So how to structure it so that it actually happens, I think, is 90%.
I think you're right on, man. In all honesty, I mean, my wife and I do another podcast towards married couples, and we talk about date nights and making time. And you hit it on the head. I mean, if you want to do a yoga practice together, you're gonna have to find the time. That's 90% of the issue is sitting down and just going, let's do it. And right. Heck, I'm not saying I'm immune to this. I mean, heck, I'm married. I got 2 kids, and Elise and I've been wanting to do a dance class for probably 6 months. And,
right.
Oh yeah, we'll do it. Same thing though. We can't get the time. So I think you're right on with that.
Yeah, but also having a third party or another location involved leverages the situation a bit, because it makes it more of a commitment. Like you wouldn't crap out on a business meeting you made with someone else.
Right.
You'd be rushing out of the house going, hey, gotta go, got this commitment, So, having sort of a yoga date where you're going somewhere and doing it is a little bit more like that, but also bringing an instructor in to work with you too in the home is kind of like that. You're not going to crap out on that appointment either.
Right.
So it's just a way of sort of leveraging the situation to make sure it actually happens.
Yeah.
Then that's 90% of there.
Yeah. And then because once you're in it and you're going, you're learning and you're expanding that connection you have with your spouse.
Right, and I can't overemphasize the usefulness of having a trained instructor, a trained teacher to help you at least get started with it. Like I've gone in where I've worked with couples in the past, and we have a couple of sessions just to get them on track, get them a sense of what they can do and how far they can go, and I give them a little thing, either a written diagram with little stick figures of the sequences that I develop for them, or I even make a little audio recording that they can play. Nice. And also, men and women are different from each other. 2 people are different from each other. So even though they may be doing a similar practice together, there's little variations and ways that they can, like the woman can work on a little bit more strength in this pose, and the man can work on a little more flexibility in that pose. And so a trained instructor can really help with that, to have an eye for how each person can maximize their benefit from even doing the same practice. Where
can people go to find studios? I know for me, just where I live in Poway here, I mean, I've done searches.
Poway, where's that?
San Diego.
Oh, San Diego.
Yeah, we're in San Diego, Kent.
Oh, you're in the heart of yoga land down there. Are you kidding?
Well, Poway's a little ways away, but how can people search? I mean, other than just going into Google and putting yoga San Diego, California.
Well, that's a start. Start. There's something called the Yoga Alliance, which is an organization that administers the 200 and 500 hour standards for certification programs. I happen to have been one of the people that helped set up those standards before the Alliance existed. And they have listings of schools and individual teachers geographically. If you want to get really serious with even a more highly trained professional, there's the International Association of Yoga Therapists, IAYT.org. Okay. And they have a similar listing of people, and yoga therapists typically have even more training than the 500 hours, which is the top level of the Yoga Alliance. And they are much more trained to individualize practice for one-on-one instruction. And that's a good way to start a search. But I can't overemphasize enough the importance of establishing a personal connection and communication with whoever the teacher is. There is no listing or initials after their name or a piece of paper hanging on the wall. that can ever replace the need for there to be a connection, you know. And there's a lot of people that don't have those listings and don't have, I'm not listed with IAYT or the Alliance, interestingly enough. I never cared about it. There's a lot of people that don't have any of that who are fantastic teachers, you know. And so the only way to determine that is to have that connection and communicate.
And so you would say for a new client coming to you, it's almost an interviewing process. You're interviewing them, they're interviewing you, totally checking you out, going, hey, Leslie works with us or he doesn't. And if you don't work, maybe you'd go, hey, maybe you would work better with so-and-so. They have
someone
more.
else?
Yeah, they have that. Okay. Yeah. So folks, don't be scared to, you know, find that right teacher who can really help you out.
Yeah.
I think it would be.
And it doesn't matter what anyone else says about them or how great they are for your friends or this or that. If you don't feel that connection, then, you know, move on. That's the responsibility of the student, really, when selecting a teacher, is to rely on their own judgment.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the self and how yoga can help increase the self, ourselves. You know, when especially again as busy couples, one of the biggest thing I hear from both male and female, husband and wife, energy levels. You know, new kids may be 3 years old, 6 years old, whatever, getting up at night. Gosh, my energy is low in the morning. It might peak midday, but then right after that it crashes. You know, how can yoga help for this style, for this person who just feels lethargic most of the day?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that when you practice yoga, you get you start getting more information from your system than you're used to getting. That can be a double-edged sword. I mean, the good news is that you're feeling and sensing and communicating more effectively with all of the incredible internal sensing information your body provides to you, okay? That's the good news. And it's also the bad news, because a lot of how we get through a day, like you described, has to do with suppressing that information and just keeping going, you know? So this goes to the heart of how yoga views both the theory and practice. And that is that we're always in a balancing act between that which keeps us stable and that brings us up. In Sanskrit, these terms are referred to as sthira, which is stability, and sukha, which is space, openness, freedom. And so in a way, how we get through a day, in spite of all of the challenges you mentioned, is accomplished through how we stabilize our system. You know, for example, you know, I get out of bed in the morning and I just feel, I didn't get great sleep. I don't have low energy. I could so easily just turn over and sleep for 4 more hours, you know. Right. Everyone's felt that at some point, especially, you know, parents with small children. Yet you have to get up. You have to go to work. You have to do your thing. What do you do to yourself in that moment? How do you shift out of that, what your system wants to do, which is to sleep more, to getting up on your feet, starting your day, and getting off to work? You know, we're always shifting our activities either in response to our internal states or in slight contradiction to our internal states. You know, at the end of the day, for example, a lot of people face you know, the opposite challenge. Like, you know, you're all revved up, you're wired, maybe you've had a few cups of coffee during the day, you know, maybe you had to eat late for whatever reason, and it's time to go to sleep, but you're revved up, you know? What do we do to calm ourselves down? What do we do to settle, to relax, you know? So in a yoga practice, what we begin to become aware of is all of these ways in which we've already been shifting our system to get through our day, but we find better ways, you know, through the use of the breath, through the use of awareness, through the use of some simple movements. For example, if I'm sluggish in the morning and I wake up, you know, and wanted to go to sleep again, I might hit snooze and sleep 10 more minutes, and then hit snooze again and sleep 20 minutes. Now I'm late, right?
Right.
But being late can be very motivating because now you're, and it's like, holy crap, I got to go, and and you're rushing. That's one way to get yourself going. You're creating a kind of an emergency. But that's going to kick in your adrenals. It's going to fire up your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight mechanism. And you're going to be kind of operating off of that energy at the start of your day, and you're going to take it from there, which is probably why you're still going to be pretty revved up at the end of the day when it's time to calm down.
Right.
That's just one example. This is, this is using kind of the extremes to illustrate the point.
But I think you're right on with many of us doing that.
Yeah, right. Well, what if then at the beginning of the day, instead of hitting snooze, you have something that you can do. You can get up and you can just do a few movements of your body with your breath. This is where the traditional time of day is that you do some sun salutations, greeting the sun, starting the day. Get your body and your breath and your mind sort of moving and coordinated, and you're waking yourself up in a less extreme way, with some movement, with some breathing, with all of that, and that way you're starting your day with a little bit more balance, rather than careening from one extreme to the other, from being revved up and kind of moving off of all of that nervous energy, and then finally being able to sleep because you're just so exhausted. See, a lot of people have trouble really distinguishing between true tiredness at the end of the day and just simple exhaustion, which is different. So to go back to my original point, yoga practice makes you more sensitive to these internal states, but it also gives you some tools that you can use to sort of shift yourself in the direction you want to go in a less extreme way. And that's why, we do a combination of upright, standing kind of energetic exercises, and also more horizontal, relaxing, sort of revving down things. And a good practice encompasses both of those, But also, depending on what time of day you practice, if you are practicing more in the morning, it's definitely more of a wake-up kind of a thing. If you're practicing towards the end of the day, it's more of a revving down kind of a thing. And these are just the general dynamics of life, and yoga practice sort of encompasses those dynamics and makes them a little more apparent, so that you have more tools to use, to make those shifts in less extreme ways. But
Nice.
we're always doing that, whether you study yoga or not. You're always shifting your system.
Yeah, you're right.
To get the job done, to get through your day. It's just a matter of getting better at it and getting more conscious at it is what yoga can offer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Another question I got for you. Whenever you search the internet and you're looking for yoga, maybe a certain pose or position, I mean, you see lanky women, guys that are thin. How does yoga, here's the straight up question. Somebody who's heavier, overweight, can they practice yoga in a way that's going to still benefit them? And does yoga help them decrease some of that weight as well?
Well, it's not going to burn off the calories like cardio is going to.
Okay.
But the way in which it helps with weight reduction is all the things that I just mentioned. It has to do with becoming more sensitive to your system. And people who overeat, for example, are regulating themselves, with eating. A lot of times it's an emotional regulation that people are doing. A lot of times it's just that their metabolism has been thrown off to such an extent that that's, how they're trying to maintain some kind of homeostasis. And the idea of becoming conscious about what you're putting into your body starts with the breath. The breath is the ultimate source of nutrition. And so when you start learning a little bit about the taking in of the breath and the releasing of the breath, the inhale and the exhale, it puts you in touch with what's going on inside of you a little bit more. And that's been shown to be a very important component for weight loss. Okay. Obviously, the age-old formula is true. You have to burn off more than you're taking in terms of calories. So, yoga is not the kind of activity I would recommend for the literal burning off of the calories, because it's just not designed for that. It does improve the efficiency of your cardiovascular system from the standpoint of breath. Remember, all of your organs attach to your diaphragm. So getting a fuller range of motion of the diaphragm in the body is an important component or an adjunct to any other physical activity you're going to be doing. But to get to the broader point, underlying your question is like, who can do yoga?
Yeah.
Is there anyone who can't do yoga?
Yeah.
And my teacher, who's one of the top authorities on this topic, on the therapeutic application of yoga, likes to say that if you can breathe, if you can think, and you can move your body even a little bit, you can do yoga. There's no person that's ever been brought to me, and I run clinics and trainings and all this, that has been so physically compromised that they can't do yoga. And I'm talking about people in wheelchairs. I'm talking about people with tumors. I'm talking about people who've had strokes. It would be hard to teach someone yoga who's on a ventilator, who's being breathed by a machine.
Right.
That would be rough. But there's still something you can do, And the thing I like to tell my students who come here to study these things is that no matter how screwed up the scenario is that you can come up with about what's gone wrong with someone's body, who comes to you for help, you have to remember, if they can think, if they can breathe, if they can move their bodies even a little bit, there's still more going right in that person's body than is going wrong.
Which is a very different thinking, though. That's a very different thinking than most people.
Well, absolutely, because the tendency is to focus on what's gone wrong.
Exactly.
The tendency is to focus on the symptoms and to focus on the dysfunction and all of the pain and all of the suffering. And obviously, that's what stands out, and that's what makes people seek help. But from the standpoint of a yoga practitioner, because we work with the basic life force of the system, we work with the breath, we work with the thing that makes you take your next breath. That's still there. Yeah. That's still inside. That's what we work with. And our job is just to make more room for that so it can express itself more fully. So, whatever you see that's going wrong with someone's body, if they fulfill those requirements, if they can breathe on their own, if they can think, and if they can move their bodies a little bit, you have the basic tools that you need to help that person. Because that's what's going right with the system. And that's what we focus on. That's what we start with. Even if it's as simple as getting someone to do this. To inhale and exhale. Or like that. That's how you start. You can do it from a wheelchair. You can do it from a hospital bed. You can do it, from whatever scenario you can come up with that would seem to preclude anything else. Mm-hmm. But yoga is still possible. So can someone who's overweight do yoga? Hell yeah. Right. They should. That's why we asked Megan to participate in the DVD. The DVD you held up earlier. Megan Garcia, one of our models, specializes in yoga for plus size. And she actually wrote a wonderful book called Mega Yoga about the topic. And there's an alternate audio track you can cue in on the DVD where she talks you through the entire sequence of exercises from the perspective of someone with a voluptuous body and how she makes certain modifications and all that. So absolutely.
Nice. And for those of you who are interested in the DVD, I will have links below so you can click it and check it out because, Leslie is right. Megan is right there on the right-hand side of the video, and she's just going at it.
Right. Is it an associate link? You get a little kickback from that?
Yeah. Sure. I'll put
it's an associate link, right? So you get a little kickback.
Yeah, as long as it's on Amazon.
There you go.
If it's not on Amazon, I can't do anything. I put it to Human Kinetics at that point. So
no, I get it from Amazon. I get my books from Amazon. I don't get my books from my publisher. I buy my books from Amazon.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome, Leslie. You know what? This has been fantastic. I really appreciate your honesty, your down-to-earth approach to yoga, sharing your insights. I think it really helped, even for me, just to understand more. And I know Our audience will really get a lot out of it. What I love to end with is what's your one tip for busy couples to jump into yoga?
Busy couples to jump into yoga. Um, well, I think it's just make a date, you know, make a date and do it, you know. It's just a matter of carving out the time and the space. And that's for a busy couple, that's 90% of the struggle right there, you know, which is why I suggested, you know, go someplace, you know, go to a yoga class and maybe have a nice dinner afterwards so that, you know, it's something to look forward to rather than a task or an obligation of some kind, rather than, you know, oh, we should do this. Let's say, oh, this is a fun thing we're going to do together and we'll go explore. And you may hate it, you know, you may hate it, but at least you'll have, you know, shared that experience and you can go, oh, remember that class we went to? That really sucked. You know, I'm sure there's a better one somewhere else. Whatever it is, you're going to do it together. And that's the most important thing.
Awesome. Leslie, thanks again for taking the time this morning. And you have yourself a fantastic day.
Thank you. You too. I look forward to seeing how it comes out. You're going to send me the link, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll send you the link. Take care, Leslie.
Okay. Great. All right.
Bye.
See ya.
Awesome. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Leslie was a wealth of information. And from somebody who's been doing yoga for 5+ years at home, I learned a lot. I hope you did too. I hope if yoga is something that you've been looking at, that this interview really makes you go after it. Take that jump and try it out. If you want, try out Leslie's DVD. I have it up here on the screen for you, Breath-Centered Yoga. I've been using it. If you're looking to enhance yoga within your marriage, take Leslie's advice. Go make a date night with your spouse and go to a class, a studio, and learn. If you have any questions for me, hit me up, tony@fitmarriage.com. If you want to say anything, add to this interview, please enter your comments below. We love hearing from you guys. So until the next time, have a fantastic week.